Hello and welcome to The Rabbit Hole, the Definitive Developers Podcast. Living large in New York. I'm your host, Michael Nunez. Our co-host today,
Dave Anderson.
And today we'll be talking about the definition of done.
Mike, are you done with that yet?
Am I done defining the definition of done? No, and I think we need...
Are you done with the podcast?
No, I'm not done. No. The definition of done on the podcast is not done. We're not done here. But today we will be defining what is the definition of done and how to use it in your team to determine whether the features or the epics and the stories that you're working on are done and finished.
Okay, so what does it mean to be done with something? Like, I got a good product manager. They're very kind to us and they write out like a very good list of acceptance criteria, like all the features that they want in there. And then I write up the code and then I'm done with the code. So I think, I'm done.
Yeah, so you're done. Yes. But is the feature, are we putting that feature to rest, putting the final nail in the coffin, looking away at the horizon for other features that need to be built? That's the definition of that. I'll try to read this definition. I believe it's from the productplan.com. States the following. I'm going to try to do this in one take. Let's go. The definition of done is an agreed upon set of items that must be completed before a project or user story can be considered complete. It is applied consistently and serves as an official gate separating things from being in progress to done.
Okay, so you're right. I should send it for code review. And I guess after I got the code review, I got to merge it.
Yeah. Okay. And then you merge it, right? And then you're done. Yes.
I'm done. Yeah, that's great.
You're done. And the thing that happens a lot times that I've seen is that as engineers, that's how we feel. Like, yo, bro, I finished. The product person said, oh, this is good. And we done. Like, I'm done. I don't know about that feature, but I am done.
I mean, the rest of it is just up to fate, like... Yeah,
just leaving it up to fate.
It can kind of depend on the organization too, because like sometimes you merge and then maybe there's another team that does deployments, there's another team that does testing, and you got to do a handoff. So maybe like there's another swim lane on your Kanban board in Jira or whatever system you're using, and you just drag it over. Okay, it's ready for QA.
Yep.
Done.
So the dev is done, right? But then as you mentioned, it could be, in this particular example, you have QA who's going to do the QA testing for this particular feature. Is the feature done? No. Is the development work for that feature done? Yeah, I guess. Until that QA person comes back to you and says, hey, wait a second. This form, when I put numbers in it, it's broken. It breaks everything. And there's a problem. What are we going to do about this?
Well, now this is a new thing. Now I'm open a new... I did the other ticket. Now I open a new ticket.
What you got to do, you got to fix it, right? Like no. It has to get fixed.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I guess it doesn't really work. But yeah, I guess that's why some people like to say that there's a difference between something being done versus done.
Yes, the done.
Yeah, because any one thing can be done, or any one step or part of it. You can be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm done with the coding, or I've rebased it and then merged it and got it ready. But as a team, we should have a shared understanding of what it is that it means to be done for real.
Yeah, and it is ultimately up to the team. All right, let's use the same example. So you're done as a developer. You pass it up to QA. QA tries to do a SQL injection on this form field that you have. Try to use body table semicolon, but is unsuccessful, Dave, because you thought ahead and realized you want to block SQL injections from happening into your form fields. So then QA takes it and they say they're done. And they put it over onto the staging environment to make sure that everything works fine and it's not broken. And then you show it to the stakeholders who may want to check the feature before it goes and gets released to your users. So what if the stakeholder says, hold on a second, I realized this form may not be a good place for it. Maybe we want to put it at a different place. Maybe we want to move it into somewhere else or whatever, right? So like this, you can add so many dones, if you will, quote unquote, to this list of your definition of done. You can have a done 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 or a done 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 done, right? Like you have to figure, you and the team need to figure out the steps necessary to do the proper handoff so that there is minimal blockage of the process, as well as getting the features out to the user entirely.
Right. I mean, like, yeah, because in the end, you do have to deploy to production. And maybe like a user should also be able to use it as well. That would be great.
Yes.
So either if you have a feature flag, you should toggle the feature flag, get ready to roll it out. Or maybe do a communication to end users, update the documentation, or do an email blast like, hey, everybody, it's ready. Because like if nobody's using it, then what's the point of being done?
Exactly. And I think, and this could be ultimately something, this is something that your team is going to define, right? I can see, as you mentioned, Dave, say there's a brand new feature and you want your end users to use it, you would probably do an email blast when necessary. Say there is a particular like fix that you want to have, maybe not, your definition of done for particular things may not always need an email, or that your end users have to use it. But the idea that you are fixing things up and you have the definition of done, you and the team know you've fully completed it. Everyone's did a proper handoff. Everyone's got their eyes on it. It's been deployed successfully. And you have done your work. Then you can finally drag that bad boy of a card over to the done column. And
although, like, even like if you're the product manager and you're thinking about the feature and like, is my product, or like, so maybe there's an individual feature, but is my product done? Like, am I really done? Is this the final form of this feature? Maybe users got feedback. Like, you got to listen to that feedback and you have to iterate. And, if you're really on a team that is like high performing and agile and listening to that feedback and finding user value in it, you're going to keep on iterating and the product won't really be done until it's like retired.
Yes, that is correct. So you're always going to be constantly going over your definition of done, but for the most part, as you're constantly going through this cycle of identifying when a story is done. And the more stories that the more features that you are putting out for your product, the more visible or the more in your face that definition of done will be. So as long as you and the team are familiar with the steps necessary to do that, defining what's done and then putting the story away and then moving forward would be ideal on what a definition of done is. So like, as we mentioned before, if we wanted to give anyone or everyone a basic template of what is the definition of done, a standard, Dave, do you have an idea what would that standard look like really quick?
Oh, like what would I check off on my list of things?
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta write code that passes all of the code review or all of the acceptance criteria. Maybe you're gonna do a desk check with your designer. Maybe you're gonna do a desk check with your product manager before you merge it.
Right. What is a desk check?
So
if you don't mind me.
People coming over and kind of doing a check to make sure that everything looks like generally correct, to try to avoid like rework, like we were talking earlier. I'm like overloading this, I guess, a little bit.
No, that's fine. No, it's good. We'll go back to do the checklist over. But like to have people come over to your desk, Dave, is what you're saying for a desk check? Or like to use a Zoom call, right? In the age of 2021.
Yeah, right. Like stay away from my desk, 6 feet away. But yeah, like that could be part of your definition of done. Some teams like will only do the acceptance after it's merged and deployed to an environment, which could be other steps in your definition of done, like merging it, making sure all the CI and end-to-end tests are passing, having your product manager or the stakeholders accept it, deploying it to production, getting in front of the users and getting their feedback. I think the definition of done, or like that kind of like a checklist, is just an interesting tool that you don't want to get like too heavyweight on, like, because you can get really detailed. But it can be good to think about, like, what are the bottlenecks in the process of like getting something out, and if we're like forgetting something or like having some bad handoff that takes too long, like throwing something over at QA, like maybe being really deliberate about saying, hey, like, engineers, this is your responsibility to work with the people to get it done, like the QA, the acceptance, whatever.
Right, because like a lot of the times we may, once we finish punching keys and all our tests are passing and we throw it over to QA, we think that it's over and like we try and move on with the next thing. When in reality, we should be working across teams to ensure that we are properly handling that story, cross that finish line of done.
But there's some like team structures that like, or ways that people work that make it harder to do that kind of smooth handoff and like kind of really tight collaboration. But having the checklist kind of shines a light on it.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Dave, every team is going to operate differently. But I do think that the checklist, like everyone being aware the checklist is good. And as you mentioned, if I had to run through the checklist really quick, write code, make sure it passes the acceptance criteria, possible desk check if necessary, make sure you get a code review, gets checked, merge, pass it over to QA. QA does their testing, everything's gravy, accepted, deploy, get it in front of users, get feedback. And your team is going to take that basic generic checklist and add other things to it, right? You may want to bring in the designer to pair with you as you guys are building things. Or, maybe your product person may not be available for a desk check. So you would do it in the staging environment to do any testing in that regard. The definition done is supposed to be whatever your team needs it to be to ensure that you can carry over those features to done so that your users will use it.
Follow us now on Twitter at Radio Free Rabbit so we can keep the conversation going. Like what you hear? Give us a 5-star review and help developers just like you find their way into the rabbit hole. And never miss an episode. Subscribe now however you listen to your favorite podcast. On behalf of our producer extraordinaire, William Jeffries, and my amazing co-host, Dave Anderson, and me, your host, Michael Nunez, thanks for listening to The Rabbit Hole.